live. Yes, live from Thailand, Sawadee Phuket, 8 o'clock in the morning, wherever you are. Welcome. So we're going to talk about how to hold the breath longer. Guess what? What a surprise, right? Because that's what we do on this channel. We learn how to hold our breath longer. And what is it exactly that you need to do, right? Because many people think that maybe there is like a special breathing technique that you have to use to hold your breath longer, or maybe you're missing out on the exact training program on how to hold your breath longer. Whereas in reality, all these tools, these little exercises or training plans, they are just a way to get you going so you can learn about breath holding and understand what's really going on. Because the only way to hold your breath longer is when you start understanding what goes on inside of you. And that's why breath holding is a metaphor for life. If you learn how to hold your breath, if you become more skilled in how to hold your breath longer, you will be better. You will be able to better master your mind, mentally, also physically your body, and deal with uncomfortable situations, because a breath hold is uncomfortable. And if you learn to deal with the uncomfortable, which is life sometimes, then how wonderful is that? So breath holding is a tool to make your life better, because in life we experience all kinds of uncomfortable situations, and through that practice of breath holding you learn to deal with this. So let's take a look at the Underwater Squad, my community on School, where I teach people how to hold the breath longer and master their minds. So let's get into the 6-week breathwork challenge, ultimate one. So there's many things you can do to get started, to start understanding your breath better, your body better, your mind better. And for absolute beginners, you start with the basics, of course. So there's exercises here, 15 minutes exercises for every single day during the 6-week challenge. Let's take a look at diaphragmatic breathing. So what do you learn when you do diaphragmatic breathing? Well, most people, they breathe through the chest. They have like a shallow way of breathing up in here in the chest, and that's not how you want to breathe. You want to learn how to breathe through your diaphragm. So the diaphragm is the big muscle that separates the chest from your intestines, and every time you inhale, the diaphragm lowers so the lungs can be filled. So you make space for the lungs to open up, to become bigger, so the diaphragm goes lower. That's why your belly is sticking out, because the diaphragm basically pushes your intestines out. That's why we call this belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing. Of course, you're not breathing in your belly. It's just a way of saying you're breathing air into your lungs. But as your diaphragm is lowering, your belly will be pushed out, and that's where the name belly breathing comes from. So we have to learn to breathe using the diaphragm. How are we going to do that? Well, it is by visualizing that you put air inside of your belly. Now we know the air doesn't go into the belly, the air goes into the lungs. But you visualize it, you just imagine that the air goes into the belly, and with each inhalation through the nose, you stick that belly out. So if you're watching this live right now, you can already try this together with me. So with each inhalation, put your hand on your stomach. With each inhalation, the belly goes out. You can follow on the screen as well. So we don't breathe into the chest, we breathe into the belly, and with each inhalation, the belly goes out. If you don't know how to do this, you might just want to forcefully stick your belly out. Well, not forcefully, but more consciously. So stick your belly out. Like really use your muscles in here to stick that belly out, if you don't know how to do this. In a later stage, this will become automatic, and with each inhalation, that belly will go out as the diaphragm lowers. If you are a chest breather, this might be difficult. You will feel that air is going in here. So try to avoid that and visualize on putting air in that belly. This is a relaxed position. This is a not relaxed position. This is the relaxed position. This is a bit of tension in your abdomen, so an active standing or sitting position, so it's tucked in, and now we're sticking that belly out. Diaphragmatic breathing is this. Out with the inhalation, back to normal position with the exhalation. Out, in. So diaphragmatic breathing is an absolute prerequisite for anything else in freediving or breath holding. If you don't know how to diaphragmatically breathe, you're not ready for anything. So this should be the first thing you really pay attention to. Diaphragmatic breathing also calms you down. It puts you in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest or digest response, which basically gives your body and mind time to relax, to recover. Because if you are always in the fight or flight, which is the sympathetic nervous system, which can be a result of chest breathing, then your mind and your body is always in an alert response, the alert situation. And that's fine for certain activities, because you need to be alert for certain activities, but it's not fine 24 hours a day, because sometimes you need to be up there in energy, but then you need to calm down. So there needs to be yin and yang, there needs to be balance in life. If you are always up in energy, always alert, you're gonna get crazy, because your body needs time to relax. And that's what you get when you do diaphragmatic breathing, is to get into the relax response. So here we talk about chest breathing. Why do we talk about chest breathing when I just said that we don't do chest breathing? Well, for certain bigger inhalations, like the final breath before we hold our breath, we have to breathe into the chest. So diaphragmatic breathing is normal breathing 24 hours a day when you take like a normal small breath. But when you take a final breath, a big breath, right before you hold your breath, then we also need to fill the chest. So for a final breath, we first are going to put air into the lower part of the lungs, which is diaphragmatic breathing. And then when that part is full, then we go towards the chest. So it's going to be belly, 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 chest, chest, chest. So when you take a final breath, let me pull that up here. When we take a final breath,
6, 7.
we are doing a full breath, 100%. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Belly, 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 and then chest, chest, chest. So it looks like this. As you can see on the last part, my chest is coming up. The chest does not come up in normal daily 24-hour per day breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. We don't need this part. But for the final breath, just to get as much air as possible in our lungs so we can hold our breath longer, we do fill up this place, this space. Let's do that again. Final breath, 5 seconds we take for the final breath. And then we hold the breath. All right. So that's in week number 1, different exercises. In week number 2, when you know a little bit more already, we're going to extend the breath. So when you get the basics of breath holding and breath work, now you can start working on holding the breath a little bit longer, like mini breath holds. You could start with mini breath holds 1, 4, 2, 2, 8, 4, or 3, 12, 6. Let's take a look at this one. So here we do 3, 12, 6. So we're going to inhale during the count of 3. Let me pull up 3, 12, 6. Yes, we're almost there. Okay, 3 counts inhalation. Then you hold the breath for 12 counts, seconds counts, and then you exhale through the count of 6. I will do that together with the timer that's running. So let's just wait. So now we're doing out during the count of 6. And now I will join the video. So in, during the count of 6. This way you are preparing yourself for a bit longer breath holds. Let me just switch off the fan. Because I just realized the fan was going, and maybe this is decreasing the quality of the sound, so I hope the sound is better now. Mini breath holds. Those are not real breath holds yet, those are mini breath holds, but it makes you feel more comfortable with holding your breath a little bit and then exhaling. So when you exhale, you don't need to exhale everything at once. You can just take your time for an exhalation. Now, a little bit more advanced now, FRC and RV. What does that mean, right? So when you do breath holding, you have to understand that you're not always going to hold your breath on full lungs. In freediving, we also hold the breath on empty lungs or partially empty lungs. So you need to understand what is the difference between full lungs, partially empty lungs, and completely empty lungs. So FRC stands for functional residual capacity. That is the amount of air that is still in your lungs after a passive exhalation. So I will do a passive exhalation now. I'm going to take in a final breath, and then I'm going to do a passive exhalation. Final breath. Passive exhalation. That is FRC, functional residual capacity. When I take a full breath, more or less 5 to 6 liters of air is in my lungs. When I do a passive exhalation, still 3 liters will be in my lungs. So this idea that when you do a passive exhalation, like for instance on the Wim Hof Method, that this would be a empty lung breath hold is completely wrong. There is still 3 liters of air in my lungs after a passive exhalation. That's an FRC, functional residual capacity. Now, instead of doing a passive exhalation, we can also do a forceful exhalation, and we call that RV, residual volume. So we go beyond the passive exhalation. So we do passive exhalation, and then when it's done, we keep on exhaling. We're going to force air out until we cannot get any more air out. So we would think, okay, that is empty lungs, right? No. There is still 1.2 liters, more or less, depending on how big you are, male, female, in your lungs, 1.2 liters. So actually, the term empty lungs does not exist because there is always still air in your lungs. Now, the least amount of air that you can have in your lungs is RV, residual volume, 1.2 liters. It looks like this. Passive exhalation. Now forceful. And then you hold a breath. This is quite stressing on your body. If you're a beginner, do not try this first because it puts a lot of stress here on the airways, and you can actually hurt yourself. So be very, very careful with this. If you want to try this, try it a little bit, but don't do it as aggressively as I did now. We talk about intercostal breathing, which is breathing using these muscles, the intercostals. So you can use your diaphragm. Diaphragm goes up and down. And also these muscles are working when you are breathing, because the whole rib cage is expanding when you inhale. So not only the diaphragm goes lower, but also these muscles here help expand your rib cage. These are the flying ribs. The flying ribs that come open when you inhale. So these are the intercostal muscles. So when you inhale, all the respiratory muscles, they are working. And the respiratory muscles, they are also in the back, on your back. So because the lungs, they are not just in front of you, they are also in here, the back. So you could call the whole thoracic area, all these muscles here, you could call those all respiratory muscles. When you inhale, also these muscles here in the back and in the shoulders, they are expanding and helping the thoracic area to open up so you can put more air in your lungs. So good to know that it's not just your diaphragm working, but the whole upper body. You can try a full yogic breath, which is another way of using a bigger breath and then holding and releasing. For instance, 6, 5, 6. So we're going to inhale during the count of 6, then we're going to hold during the count of 5, and then we're going to exhale during the count of 6. Now it's not so much about the count, it's more about how you do it. So the purpose of the full yogic breath, it starts with full, right? It says full yogic breath. So this is going to be a full breath. So this is an exercise to make you used to taking full breaths and to create awareness of how it feels to take a full breath. Because some people, they feel uncomfortable when they take in a full breath, and that's just because they haven't done this enough. Everything that is new in life is uncomfortable. So if you practice something new and you become better at it, then suddenly from being uncomfortable, you start being comfortable. That's the whole purpose of practicing things. For this specific full yogic breath, we're going to use the lips, pointing the lips, so we can control the flux of air coming in. And then with the exhalation, we're going to use a hissing sound or a snake sound to control the flux of air coming out. And it looks like this: 6, 5, 6. Very relaxing. So we do a couple of cycles of this. I personally really enjoy doing full yogic breath. Gives me a nice feeling. So if you're stressed, or you're just maybe just stressed before freediving, like you do your first freediving course and you're on the boat and you don't really know what's going on, and you think, oh my God, will I be able to do this? You know, like a little anxiety, a performance anxiety. You can try this full yogic breath just to get yourself into the zone. I see we got some comments coming in and some thumbs up here. That's all nice. We got Lloyd, hi Gert, Russell here. Oh, Russell, hello. So we will get into the comments later. Let's just go through the whole thing. So I'm showing you here the screenshots of my underwater squats. Russell is one of the members of my squad. So we got 78 members now. We have 2 live calls per week. Here is the calendar where we do breath holding all together. And we have, of course, the classroom which I'm showing you right now with a 6-week challenge and a training program, exercise library, breathwork masterclass. So I'm just showing you snippets of the inside of the underwater squat so you have an idea of what it is. Let's continue. So the full yogic breath, we covered that. Okay, on week number 3, we're gonna start breathing less. Not yet full breath holds, but start to breathe less. For instance, square breathing 666. Square breathing is a breathing method where you learn to increase levels of CO2. So as we hold the breath, CO2 goes up. And we need to become comfortable with this, because the number one reason why people stop holding their breath is because it becomes uncomfortable. And what does that mean, uncomfortable? It means higher levels of CO2. So the byproduct of holding your breath is higher levels of CO2, which creates the urge to breathe, which is a quite subjective thing to talk about, because what exactly is the urge to breathe? It's quite personal and subjective, and you can learn to become comfortable with the urge to breathe. So we all learn this in the underwater squats. When you do square breathing, you're going to inhale during a certain count, for instance, the count of 6. Then you're going to hold during the count of 6. Then we're going to exhale during the count of 6. And then we're going to hold again during the count of 6. I will demonstrate with the timer now. In. Hold. out, and hold. So, on this last breath hold, this last hold, I had already empty lungs, right? Because I just exhaled. That was a passive exhalation. Remember FRC. So when you passively exhale, that's an FRC, still 3 liters in the lungs. So on the last breath hold, you're holding your breath after passive exhalation, FRC. On the first breath hold, you hold your breath after full lungs. So not only do you get used to holding your breath after partially empty lungs, you also get used to higher levels of CO2, right? So this is a wonderful training technique as a preparation to hold your breath longer, to get used to this subjective feeling of the urge to breathe and higher levels of CO2. Besides a training method to hold your breath longer, it is also a calming exercise, a calming breathing exercise. So if you feel stressed, if you feel anxious, try the square breathing. Do not do it to be able to complete the table or the counts. That's not what this is about. This is not a performance-based exercise. This is an exercise with the goal to relax. Relax. So if the count of 6 is too difficult for you, if you're a beginner, then just do the count of 4. We start on day number 1 of week number 3 with the count of 4. So once again, this is not about how tough you are. This is not about, hey Gert, I was able to do the count of 8. I'm so strong. We don't care. This is about easing in to this exercise and connecting with your body, tuning in with what is really going on in here and relaxing and being able to go through several minutes of this exercise without feeling the uncontrollable desire to do something else. Because for people, it's in this day and age, it's very difficult to just sit still on a chair for 5 minutes and do nothing. If I would ask you sit on a chair for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and do nothing, you would go completely crazy. So try to do square breathing for like 5 minutes or even 10 without standing up, without moving around, without going through your hair or whatever. Just sit still, do these exercises. And if you want to do something else, you got time for that after the exercise. So all these breathing exercises, you might think it's about the breathing itself, but a part of it is actually about you being able to just sit still and concentrate on one particular exercise. All right, we talk about hyperventilation, which is the opposite of breathing less. So yeah, let me go a little bit deeper into hyperventilation, what that exactly is. So breathing less, that's what breath holding is about, right? So when you hold your breath, you are obviously breathing less because you're not breathing at all, you're just holding your breath. Hyperventilation means breathing more. Hyper is breathing more. So when you breathe more than you need to, you are hyperventilating. So it looks something like this. This is hyperventilation. When you do normal breathing, the kind of breathing that we do 24 hours a day, normal light breathing, we call this tidal breathing. Tidal breathing is about half a liter in, half a liter out, half liter in, half liter out, and slow. So I'm going to demonstrate this, but I'm going to warn you already, you won't see anything. Because when you do tidal breathing, there's nothing going on. We do tidal breathing through the nose. It looks like this. So you didn't see anything. There's nothing going on. If you would see anything going on, it's because I'm already hyperventilating. If I would be doing something like this, now you see there's something going on, right? My chest is going up. You can see my nose, my nostrils are flaring out. That's already hyperventilation because I'm breathing more than I need to. I don't need to breathe like this. My body does not need so much air. No, just normal tidal breathing, baseline breathing, a little exhalation, a little inhalation, a little exhalation, tidal breathing. If, however, we would be breathing less than tidal breathing, we would call that hypoventilation. And hypoventilation is under breathing. When we breathe less than we need to, we will eventually start feeling the urge to breathe because we're not breathing enough. We're not holding our breath either. We are breathing, but we're not breathing enough to sustain the breathing during 24 hours a day. Tidal breathing. So we're hypoventilation. So again, you're not going to see anything. But now I'm breathing less than tidal breathing, and if I would continue doing this like over a minute or something, then for sure I would feel the effects of not having enough air, which means higher CO2 and thus the urge to breathe. So we have normal baseline breathing, tidal breathing, we have hyperventilation, we have hypoventilation. By the way, guys, if you would be interested in joining the underwater squad, we have a free trial, so you can just join for free for 7 days, and the free trial lasts until March 24. So on March 24, I will remove the free trial. So if you want to try out the underwater squad, you got time until March 24 to just go in there, join for free. Until March 24, you can join for free, and then you have 7 days for free. Did I mention it's for free? So let's continue. Switch the screen here. Yeah, there we go. So we covered that. Oh, the Bohr effect, of course. Yeah, the Bohr effect is something that we need to understand in freediving, because the Bohr effect actually describes that. This is not a nice picture of me. Let me get something else. Yeah, that's better. So the Bohr effect describes how your red blood cells, more particularly the hemoglobin, the red protein inside of the red blood cells, how the hemoglobin releases oxygen. So when we breathe, we get air into the lungs. Air consists of 21% of oxygen, and that oxygen is being transported through our bloodstream, and the hemoglobin, the red blood cells, are holding on to that or transporting that oxygen. Now, besides just transporting oxygen, the hemoglobin also has to release the oxygen, because our muscles, if we are moving around, the muscles, they need that oxygen. So transportation is not just enough. Hemoglobin also needs to release the oxygen to the working muscles, the working tissues. And that release of oxygen to the working muscles happens in a more efficient way when the Bohr effect is high. And when is the Bohr effect high, or when is the Bohr effect working more efficiently? It is when you have higher levels of CO2. So higher levels of CO2 make your body, the hemoglobin, release the oxygen better to the working muscles. Now, when do you have higher CO2? It is when you breathe less. So when you hold the breath, we are getting higher CO2, but also when we just simply breathe less, we are breathing, but we're breathing less, then we get higher levels of CO2, which will increase the Bohr effect and thus release the oxygen better to the working muscles. And that's why hyperventilation is not such a good idea, because what does hyperventilation do? Hyperventilation decreases your levels of CO2. So when you have decreased levels of CO2, the Bohr effect does not work that good. In fact, the Bohr effect is inhibited, is stopped from working optimally. So when you hyperventilate and you have lower levels of CO2, the hemoglobin is holding on more to the oxygen. It does not release the oxygen to the working muscles. It's holding on to it. So basically your muscles and your tissues are not getting enough oxygen. And that is why hyperventilation is actually a hypoxic way of breathing. A lot of people, especially Wim Hofers, they think when you hyperventilate, you're getting more oxygen into the body. No, it's just the opposite. Because of reduced CO2 and reduced Bohr effects, you get less oxygen to the working muscles, less oxygen to the brain, and that is why blackout happens more often on hyperventilation breath holds because of many reasons. It's a complex topic, and we discussed that in the breathwork masterclass inside of the underwater squat. But basically, you're not getting enough oxygen to the brain, plus hyperventilation, lower CO2, takes away the alarm bell. What is the alarm bell? It's the urge to breathe. So when you hold your breath at a certain point, you will feel the urge to breathe becoming stronger and stronger, and that is the sign for you to stop the breath hold and start breathing again. So the urge to breathe is higher CO2. What happens when you hyperventilate? The CO2 goes down. So you don't get that urge to breathe, or at least you're not getting it in time. You might get it later, but it might be too late. You might already be approaching dangerous hypoxic levels, so low levels of O2, oxygen, with a blackout as a result. So hyperventilation is a very difficult topic. That's why there are so many misconceptions about hyperventilation. That's why on my Wim Hof videos on my YouTube channel, I've received more than 4,000 comments of angry Wim Hofers wishing me to hell and telling me that I'm all wrong about it, and the Wim Hof method does put more oxygen in your brain and in your body. No, it does not. It does not. But I understand why people react this way. It's because it's a difficult topic. It's a very difficult topic, and I'm only giving you like a very small part of it very fast, like in a couple of minutes I'm talking about this. But if you really want to know the ins and outs of hyperventilation, then you should study this. There's many ways to study this. You can just Google, you can ask ChatGPT what exactly is hyperventilation, or you can go to the underwater squats and join us where we learn about all of this. And not just learning, but we train our breath holds. All right. Expanding the lung capacity in week number 4. So, besides learning about breathing exercises, we also want to stretch our muscles, because the more we stretch the respiratory muscles, the more air we can take in. So one of the main muscles that help us breathing is the diaphragm. So to stretch oh my God, how do we stretch the diaphragm? I'm back on track. We stretch the diaphragm by using the Ujjana Bandha. Ujjana Bandha is a abdominal stretch. Here we go. We lean forward. We exhale all the air out, all the air out, all the air out, and then we suck in. We suck in that diaphragm, we suck it in, Here I'm just, I'm not sucking it in here, I'm just showing you the exhalation. Let me get another video. Standing Ujjana Bandha. Let's see if we can see it better here. So we can do the Ujjana Bandha seated or standing. Yes. Okay, so here, I paused the video, you can see that I sucked in that diaphragm. So this part here goes all in. You suck in the diaphragm under your ribs. Why do we do that? Because we want the diaphragm to become flexible. The more flexible your diaphragm, the more you can lower your diaphragm and thus take in more air. But not just to take in more air, also to have a better control of your diaphragm, because it's an important muscle. And if you want to free dive, the diaphragm is extremely important for equalizing. Yes, you might not have guessed that, but equalization is directly related to the flexibility of your diaphragm. So the Ujjana Bandha, super important. We practice this as well. Let me see if I have a better angle here. So you can see here, instead of the belly out, now the belly is in. We do not use like our abdominal wall to suck this in, because it's not about the abdomen, it's about this muscle here, it's about the diaphragm. So sucking that diaphragm in. If you become really good at this, it's nice to take pictures of this for your Instagram. It looks really cool on your Instagram, but that should not be your first reason. First reason should be control of the diaphragm for better breathing, better breath holding, and eventually also equalization in freediving. We discussed a little bit about dry packing. This is now advanced. So in freediving for beginners, which is 95% of the whole freediving community, right? We don't use packing because you don't need it, but we can use dry packing as a technique to stretch the respiratory muscles. Now, what is dry packing? Let me explain you first what is packing. So packing is taking sips of air on top of your final breath. So we take a final breath and then we hold the breath, right? Now, if we take sips of air, little sips of air on top of that final breath, then we are going to put even more air into the chest, which might feel uncomfortable if you are not flexible in here. So again, a reason to stretch, not just the thoracic area, the chest, but the whole body. So if this is flexible, it can open up more. And when you pack, you take air in on top of your final breath, then this stretches more. So this is a stretching exercise. The dry packing inside of the underwater squat, we use it as a stretching exercise. Now it's just an introduction because this is an advanced way of stretching, but I want to give you, even if you're a beginner, I want to give you some advanced techniques as well, so you know this exists. So I will demonstrate this. I will do 5 packs on top of the final breath. Here we go. And I exhale. As I take these packs, I feel the pressure building up. With each pack, I get more air into your lungs and I feel the pressure building up. Russell is asking a question. I will get to that when I'm done taking you through the underwater squats. But thank you for your question. Let's read it quickly. What happens when you do bandha every day for a month? Okay, I can quickly answer that. You will get better, Russell. If you do this every day for, let's say, a couple of minutes, you will get better. For sure, you will increase flexibility in your diaphragm, and this will overall help you in holding your breath longer and simply manage breathing and breath holding better. All right, let's get back to the ultimate one, the 6-week challenge. So we were in week number 4, so we stretch here. Week number 5, probably interesting for a lot of you, overcoming stress and anxiety. Now you would think, okay, Gert, you're teaching us breath holding, you come from a freediving background, so the breath holding you're teaching us is for the purpose of freediving. Why are you dedicating a whole week to overcoming stress and anxiety? I mean, what's the connection with breath holding? Well, the connection is everything, because breath holding is about stress and anxiety. The number one reason why you stop your breath hold is because you're subconsciously stressed and anxious. So yes, the urge to breathe will go up, the CO2 levels will go up, which is a physiological process that is happening, but it's also mental, because just because CO2 goes up, that doesn't mean that you have to feel uncomfortable. Nobody said that higher CO2 is uncomfortable. It's only uncomfortable when you decide it is uncomfortable. And we learn mind mastering techniques in the underwater squats, or if you would ever follow a freediving course, you will learn mind mastering techniques like visualization, where we teach you on how to deal with higher levels of CO2, how to focus your mind better, so you would not label this change in CO2 as uncomfortable. Because at the end of the day, and it's a philosophical question, what is being uncomfortable? I can slap myself in the face and say, wow, that was uncomfortable. Or I can say, whoa, that was actually pretty fun, let's do this again. It's up to me to decide what is uncomfortable. If you never went to the gym and then you go to the gym for the first time because your friends or your parents or your partner or whoever was asking you like for 6 months already, can you please go to the gym and work on yourself? So finally you give in and you say, okay, let's go to the gym for the first time in your life. And then you come home and you say, this felt uncomfortable. Why does it feel uncomfortable? Because you decide it feels uncomfortable. You could also decide it does not feel uncomfortable. Everything that is new in your life, you have to work on. So through working on something, you switch from feeling uncomfortable or labeling something as uncomfortable to being more comfortable, or at least less uncomfortable. So we learn this in visualization techniques. We also do, so quickly, what is a visualization technique? So you're basically going to play a movie in your head. While you hold your breath, instead of focusing on how long am I holding my breath already? And oh my God, I feel this urge to breathe coming up already. Instead of focusing on those negative things, which will only make it worse, you're going to focus on something positive. That's why we use visualization techniques. For instance, you think about something from your childhood. If you've had a nice upbringing, a wonderful childhood, if you like to think about certain things when you were a child, then you can imagine that and play that movie. So you play that movie in your head, you see yourself as a child, as a 10-year-old, playing in your street with your friends, and you remember the skateboard you had, or the bicycle, or the whatever it was you were playing with. You remember that, you remember the skateboard of your friends, and you're visualizing this, and you're going through all of that in your head. And while you are remembering more and more details of this, you are forgetting about time, because this is the wonderful thing about visualization. When you think about that movie, when you play that movie in your head, you won't think about how long am I holding my breath already, or oh my God, the breath hold soon is going to become uncomfortable. You don't think about that. You just think about the movie, and before you know it, 2 minutes, 3 minutes will have passed, way longer than you thought you would be able to hold your breath. That is visualization. We can also do the body scan. So the body scan is also a technique to relax during a breath hold. It's maybe a bit more physical and less mental. So you're basically going to go over all the body parts and imagining that the stress is going out. So let's say you start with your hands. You move your hand a little bit to be sure the stress is out. You visualize stress going out. For instance, if you hold your breath and your hand is like this, that's a sign there is stress, because this is stress. This is relaxed. This is already a bit of stress. So to be sure the stress is out, you might want to open up your hand and close it. So we go from here, a little bit stress, to opening up and then relaxing your hand. So you're sure you go from stress to opening up and relaxing. Then you go over your wrist. Hey, am I carrying tension in my wrist? Well, let's try. Now we're not carrying tension anymore. So you don't necessarily have to move body parts. You can also just visualize it. For instance, your elbow. When you visualize whether you have stress in your elbow, I wouldn't move my elbow. How are you going to move your elbow? So you just pay attention to the elbow and make sure you visualize stress going out. You literally visually visualize the stress getting out, like radiation getting out of your elbow. So you start here, then you go over your elbow, then your shoulder. You might want to move your shoulders a little bit just to be sure stress is out. From one shoulder you go to another, and that way you go over all your body parts. Your neck, is the stress out here? Your jaw. Okay, let's get the stress out here. Your tongue. Okay, stress is out here. Your forehead. Your eyes. Some people hold their breath like this. That's stress. Are my eyelids relaxed? Your hips, your knees, your ankles, your toes. You get the point, right? All your body parts relaxed. That's the body scan. How else can we overcome stress and anxiety? Not only to hold our breath longer, but just to simply increase the quality of our lives. Because everything you learn for breath holding, you can apply, you can use in your daily life. So even if you're not a free diver or a spear fisherman or a mermaid, even if you don't want to go into the water, you can still benefit massively from learning these techniques just to calm down and to increase the quality of your life. Since I became a freediver, I'm more grounded, I understand my body better, how it works, and I have way less stress moments because I understand now what stress is. Stress is something we do to ourselves. Stress does not come from the outside. There's no one else putting stress upon us. Stress is what we create in our head. We are responsible for the stress we have. So through these techniques, you learn how to master your mind. And in week number 6, I will give you easy executable routines, 15 minutes a day, so you can accomplish specific goals. Like for instance, this one is energy and focus. So this particular breathing method is going to give you more energy and more focus. We have breathing methods for sleep, focus and balance, flexibility. This is a 15-minute stretching routine. Relax and positive. So not just relax, but also relax and be positive. And then the last day of week number 6, total Zen. This is an absolute beauty. Now you might not understand the purpose of this if you're a beginner, so I will quickly go over this. What are we going to do here? 10 minutes of tidal breathing. So tidal breathing is normal, light breathing, right? So small inhalation through the nose, small exhalation through the nose. Tidal breathing is also the way we breathe before we hold our breath. So we call this the breathe up. Yeah? So if you're asking me what is the breathe up for freediving or spearfishing or mermaiding, it is normal light breathing. It is tidal breathing. So here we're going to do 10 minutes of tidal breathing, which is basically 10 minutes of sitting down and doing nothing and just breathing normally through the nose. Why is this so important? Because most people are not able to sit still for 10 minutes and just focus on this. The most difficult thing in life is to do nothing. If I give you a breathing exercise like square breathing, that's easier. Because in the square breathing, you can follow 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have a certain count to follow. Your mind follows this sequence. It's easy. But when I don't give you anything, when I just say, hey, sit still for 10 minutes and do tidal breathing, you don't have a sequence to follow. So you're basically doing nothing. And doing nothing is the most difficult thing in life. Now, guess what? What is breath holding? Breath holding is doing nothing. So if you are incapable of sitting still for 10 minutes while you're breathing, tidal breathing, then how do you think you're going to be able to hold your breath longer if you can't even sit still while you're breathing? So here we practice 10 minutes of sitting still, aka tidal breathing, just to focus your mind on 10 minutes of doing nothing. Extremely important. All right, so that's a 6-week challenge, guys. We also have the Ultimate 2 training program. So besides learning on breathing and what is tidal volume and all that kind of stuff, we also have a training program, right? So knowing one thing and preparing for one thing, for breath holding is one thing, but actually doing the breath holding, that's a training, right? So in Ultimate 2, we don't cover theory anymore. In Ultimate 2, you are supposed to know how to do things, and we're just training for the breath hold. So we have breath hold training programs for absolute beginners from 0 to 1 minutes, from 1 minute to 2 minutes, 2 minutes to 3 minutes, 3 minutes to 4 minutes, and 4 minutes plus. And these training programs are based upon a couple of tables. I will show you Ultimate 2. So let's go into the 1 minute to 2 minute range. We have, for instance, the progressive tables. So in a progressive table, you're starting, so this is a 2 minute progressive table. So we start with 1 minute, then 1 minute 15, then 1 minute 30, then 1 minute 45, and then 2 minutes. So for each breath hold, you're going to prepare the same amount of time. So if you hold your breath for 1 minute, you prepare for 1 minute. So it's going to be 1 minute preparation, 1 minute breath hold, 115 preparation, 115 breath holds, 130, 130, 145, 145, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. So this is a guided breath hold table. You don't need a timer or anything. Everything is on this video. All you need to do is just play the video and hold your breath together with me. This is for 2 minutes. We also have for 2:30, for 3 minutes, for 3 minutes 30, 4 minutes. So everything is divided into ranges. Besides these progressive breath hold tables, we also have the one breath table, also divided per category on how far you are in your breath hold journey. So for instance, this one, the beginner's one, 10 times 30 seconds. This is also on YouTube, but here in the Ultimate 2, it is structured. It is structured so you know exactly what to do on what day. So you don't have to ask me anymore, okay, how many times per day should we do this? And can we do this twice per day? And can we combine this with going to the gym? And no. Everything in Ultimate 2 is structured as a training program. So that's the answer to your question. When should we do that and how many times? So in a 10 times 30 seconds breath holds, you're going to hold your breath for 30 seconds for 10 times, and you're going to breathe only once in between. Once in between. So you exhale, you inhale, and you hold your breath. So there's no recovery in between. There's no time to do your breathe up or visualization or whatever. There's just one breath in between. We also have 10 times 45. We have 10 times 60 seconds. And then we also have no contractions tables. No contractions tables. So you're going to breathe up for 2 minutes and then you're going to hold your breath until the first contraction for a couple of times. Now let me get into this a bit more, the no contraction tables. Why are we doing no contractions? Because you don't want to hold your breath to a maximum every day. That is not how we do it. In freediving, we want to create a positive mindset towards breath holding. And how do you create a positive mindset? It is by doing breath holds that do not feel that difficult. So if you hold your breath to the maximum, of course you're going to get into the most difficult phase of the breath hold. But if you hold your breath until the first contraction, you basically stop right before it becomes difficult. So a contraction is a muscle spasm. It can be your diaphragm, it can be the muscles in here, it can be in here in your neck. It's like a little internal hiccup as a result of higher CO2. So when you hold your breath, CO2 builds up, and at some point you're going to feel your first contraction. Now for beginners, this might be difficult. It might take you some time to figure out what exactly is a contraction. That's okay. In the underwater squat, we learn exactly to define when comes that first contraction. So no worries. And when you are able to define that first contraction, then you can do the no contractions tables. You just stop on your first contraction, you breathe again for 2 minutes, and then you do again several times. We can also do breath holds until the third contraction, or until the fifth contraction, or even until the seventh contraction. There's different ways to do this, so we can regulate the intensity of a breath hold depending on how many contractions you will have. So instead of holding your breath for a certain time, you will hold your breath for a certain amount of contractions. In Ultimate 2, we also introduced a few new stretches. I call them here the Stretching Plus because it's advanced stretching. The backward bends on a gym ball. This is an advanced stretch. You have to be careful with this. So you're stretching your whole rib cage, but also the diaphragm you're stretching here. We do this on full lungs, but if you're an advanced freediver, this can also be done on empty lungs. Again, be very careful with this. Go gently in this. If you're a beginner, don't do this yet. Hanging, let me see if I can pull this up. We hang on a bar with one arm or with two arms. Let's start with two arms. So here we hang, which this is a wonderful exercise for flexibility in the shoulders. Now for freediving, in certain disciplines, you need to bring your arms upright. So you need to be flexible in the shoulders, because if you're not If you are not flexible in the shoulders, you will only be able to do this. But for freediving, you need to do this. I gotta work on my flexibility as well. The more you go to the gym and work out your shoulders and they get bigger, the less flexible you are. So in freediving, you have to find that perfect balance between having muscles here or having tiny shoulders. So actually tiny shoulders are better for flexibility. That's why some women who have a more tiny build, they are super flexible, of course, for freediving. Now for a man, it doesn't look so good if you're super skinny or super small shoulders. So a bit bigger shoulders always looks better for the picture. But keep in mind that bigger shoulders might compromise your flexibility in here. So especially for guys who are doing shoulder presses, you gotta work on your flexibility as well. So we have the hanging, we have the gym ball, and we have another shoulder exercise. Let me see if I can pull that one up. Yes, this one. So you're gonna hold on to a table or whatever it is you can hold on to, and then get your back in a horizontal position and try to bring your shoulders down towards the floor. Some people are more flexible than what you see in this video, so they can bring the shoulders even down. So actually you're going to see a curve, the back with arms. So this is how you stretch your shoulders, and this is a wonderful stretch. You also stretch your back and your lower back, so you tilt your hips. Yeah, that's it. So firm position, feet flat on the floor, and build that flexibility here, increase that flexibility in the shoulders. So ultimate 1, ultimate 2. Then we have an exercise library where we have all the exercises apart. So if you want to look up an exercise without going into ultimate 1 or ultimate 2, you can just go here, the exercise library. And then we have the breathwork masterclass. I could keep on talking about this for hours in this live stream. We're not gonna do that. But here you basically have in-depth courses, explanations on how to hold your breath longer, what physiological processes happen when you hold your breath, everything you need to know to understand breath holding more. So let's go quickly through this. What is holding you back the most? So I asked this question here to the members of my underwater squad. What's holding you back the most when it comes down to breath holding? And there's a reason I'm asking this question, because people might not be aware of what is holding them back the most. So most of the time, the answer that people are going to give here, or this particular thing is holding me back the most, is probably not going to be the thing that's holding them back the most. It is my job as a coach to point out what is holding you back the most. And therefore, I need to get to know you a little bit. That's why we have a community inside of the Underwater Squad. That's why we have the live trainings, so I can get to know you personally, so I can see how you hold your breath. I can listen to you when you talk about breath holding, and based upon that input, I get a pretty good picture already of who you are. Remember, I've been doing this for 10 years, so I know what is going on when someone talks to me. I can read body language, and it is easier than for me to point out, hey, why don't you try this, or why don't you try to change your mindset about that? Because what is holding you back the most in freediving is probably the way you approach breath holding. But as a beginner, you don't know about that. You did not create enough awareness, mentally and physically, to know what is really going on. So that's my job as a coach, to tell you what's going on so you can work on that. Remember, breath holding is very much a psychological thing, which makes you think differently about life. So at some point, my job as a freediving coach is actually a little bit the job of a psychologist as well. Okay, how do we delay contractions and enjoy static apnea more? So here we go really in depth on how you can delay contractions. Mental training for freediving is all mental. So here, a friend of mine is giving tips and tricks on how to focus during breath holding and how to train your mind to become more resilient, how to relax for difficult dives, tips and tricks on how to relax. As you can see, it all comes down to relaxing. Breathwork, contractions, how to identify and manage. So some people don't know what exactly is a contraction, or they don't know how to identify it. Here we talk about this. 10 tips to achieve comfort and joy in static apnea. Maybe you know how to hold your breath already, but you just don't enjoy it because, well, it's not fun. Well, we give you 10 tips here on how to make static apnea more fun. And guess what? It actually can be fun if you do it right. Tidal breathing versus hyperventilation. Here we take a look at what happens at your CO2 and O2 levels when you hyperventilate versus normal tidal breathing. We go in depth on this. We show you when happens the hypoxic point, when you can black out, how you can prevent this, and so on. Besides the scope of freediving, I talk about here how to breathe for normal daily life. So maybe you want to learn breath work and breath holding from freedivers, but you don't want to freedive. How do we apply these breathing techniques for normal daily life breathing and in particular exercising? So when you go to the gym or you run or you do martial arts or tennis or whatever it is, how do we breathe in the best possible way? That's what we cover here. Nutrition and supplements, mindset, discipline and sleep, because besides training your breath holds, you also want to look at breath holding and life in general in a different way. You need to create some kind of discipline into your life and respect your sleep, very important. And we talk about mouth taping. If you are not sure whether you are breathing through your mouth or your nose when you're sleeping, you can mouth tape. All right, that was a lot, guys. So I've gone pretty quickly over the breathwork master classes, but there's a lot in there, and I could actually dedicate a new live stream. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow, a new live stream where I go deeper into the topics we cover in the breathwork master classes. In all honesty, I could do a live stream per video, but that's gonna be a little too long. So let's just take maybe a couple of videos or maybe the whole master class library in one live. So I'll do another one tomorrow. We have a free trial in the underwater squad. So if you join, you get your first 7 days for free. So if you do not like it, or if you decide that this community, the underwater squad, is not for you, then you can just leave within those 7 days. So you don't pay anything. If you do like it, then you stay, and then after the 7 days, you pay $37 per month. So what do you get for that? You get the 6-week challenge, you get a breathwork training program, you get the exercise library, and you get this extensive breathwork masterclass. And on top of that, you get personal coaching within the Zoom call. So we have bi-weekly live trainings where you get feedback from me, where you can ask questions. So that is on Wednesday and on Saturday. If you join the free trial, you can just take a look when exactly those live sessions are. So the members of the underwater squad, they highly appreciate these live trainings. It's like our bi-weekly rendezvous meetup together. So people train their breath hold in a setting where they don't feel alone. So the problem with breath holding is that it's a very solitary practice, right? You're always doing this alone. So in the underwater squad, during our Zoom calls, you get the chance to practice breath holding together with other people, and not just practice it together, but also get feedback on this, feedback from me or even feedback from other people. And if you're not able to make it during the Zoom calls, we post them in the community as well as a replay. So you can follow those. I post the feedback that I give to people in the replays. So the feedback that I give to certain people might also be very valuable for you because, well, people are unique, but in breath holding, most of the time is the same problems that are coming back, you know? So if I give feedback to one person, that might very much apply to you as well. Let's take a look at some questions we've here. Can I Yes, I can. I can put this on the screen. Bearded Emperor, my name is Jeff. Hello. We have Russell. So Russell is part of the underwater squad. Thank you for being here, Russell. And I'm sure I will see you tonight, yes? Because now it's Wednesday morning here in Thailand, 9 a.m. now. So tonight, Thai time, which is 4 hours later in Australia, where you're from. Hope to see you there. What happens when you do the Uddiyana Bandha every day for a month? You get more flexible. So Uddiyana Bandha, if you do this a couple of minutes, maximum 5 minutes per, let's just keep it to 5 minutes. If you do this 5 minutes per day, every single day during a month, you will notice incredible increase in flexibility, because you are not used to doing this. I mean, if you don't know about Uddiyana Bandha, who has stretched their diaphragm? Who does that? In what sport do they teach you besides yoga? In what sport do they teach you to stretch your diaphragm? No sport at all. It's typical for freediving. So if you've never stretched your diaphragm and then you start stretching it for 5 minutes every single day, you will become flexible in your diaphragm. We have Abdel Hamid. Hello, dear professor. Hello, I have learned a lot from you before starting my spearfishing journey. Thank you so much. It's always good to know that besides the freediving community, I also have an audience in the spearfishing community, and I have quite some spearfishermen in the underwater squad as well. But I still struggle in controlling my self-underwater buoyancy. My weight belt is okay, but if I want to sit still in the pool underwater, my fins go up or my chest go up and I can't stick to the bottom. So buoyancy is quite complex topic, and it all depends on how deep you are. And it depends on the weights, and it depends on your wetsuit, whether you're wearing one or not, how thick it is, and it depends on how much air you take in. So there's a lot of variables to take into consideration. The more air you take in, the more positively buoyant you are. The more weights you're using, the more negatively buoyant you are. The thicker your wetsuit, the more positively buoyant you are. And the deeper you go, the more negatively buoyant you become. So your buoyancy is not a fixed thing. It depends on the depth. So if you are at 3 meters depth, your lungs are compressed a little bit. But if you are at 10 meters of depth, you experience already 2 bar, twice the pressure of the atmospheric pressure, 1 bar on the surface, which means that at 10 meters depth, your lungs are 50% of its original volume. So you have less air in your lungs. So at 10 meters, you are more negatively buoyant than at 3 meters. At 20 meters, you are more negatively buoyant than at 10 meters. So the deeper you go, the more negatively buoyant you become. So that's why in freediving and spearfishing, you want to be extremely careful with weights. I know that spearfishermen, they like to use a lot of weights to stay down so they can hunt a fish. The problem with this is you are already more negatively buoyant at your deepest point. Let's say you're spearfishing at 10 meters, and now you have to swim back up with all that weight on you and with those lungs that are compressed to 50%. So you got to be careful with this. So in freediving and in spearfishing, always use the least amount of weights that you need to do what you need to do. So in freediving, it's pretty obvious what we want to do, especially in line diving. We just want to go down to the depth where the line is set. So the line has a bottom weight at the bottom. So when we touch the bottom weight, let's say at 10 or 20 meters depth, we turn and we go back up. For spearfishing, it's a bit different because you want to stay down and get into a position and wait for the fish to come. But still, you got to make sure that you are using just enough weights and not too much. Because in spearfishing, accidents happen, and that is most of the time due to the fact that they're wearing too much weight. So if you come up and you're on the surface, and let's say you black out on the surface If you're wearing too much weights, you're going to sink down immediately. And there are videos of spearfishing accidents on YouTube where you can see a person swimming back up and then blacking out like 1 or 2 meters under the surface. But because you have this upgoing momentum, the person still reaches the surface. And then if you black out, you are automatically exhaling. So a blackout comes with an exhale. So now you have less air in your lungs and you have so much weight on you. What's going to happen? Immediately, bang, you sink to the bottom of the ocean. And if your buddy is not there to grab you, that's game over. There is no way, if your buddy is, let's say, 5 meters away from you, that he can swim after you and still grab you. Because if you're wearing a lot of weights, you will go down like an arrow to the bottom of the ocean, and that's game over. So in freediving, the rule is, if you are on the surface and you exhale, you should not sink. So you got to play with that, right? You got to be very mindful about how much weight you're using. All right. We've got Avi Rothstein. Ankle weights exist. You should experiment with redistributing your weights. Well, it depends on the discipline, right? It depends on what you want to do. I'm not sure if you're talking about freediving or spearfishing. So for freediving, we use neck weights. Because if you put weights on your ankles, then the center of gravity is going towards your feet. But in freediving, you go down head first. And I assume in spearfishing as well, right? So your head needs to be the heaviest part. So when you put a neck weight on you, the center of gravity is on your head, which makes it easier to stay in a downwards position. Avi Rothstein, you should aim to be neutral though, not negative. Well, we have to interpret this when you say you should aim to be neutral. Where? You should aim to be neutral where? So in freediving, we aim to be neutral at 10 meters depth. That's what we do. That's a starting point. So for most recreational freediving, I'm not talking about advanced freediving where we dive to 50 meters and deeper. For recreational freediving to 10, 20, 30 meters, if you could call 30 meters recreational, right? We aim to be neutral at 10 meters depth. So in a beginner's freediving course, if the student is able to go down to 10 meters, we go down with the student, we hold the line at 10 meters depth, and then we let go of the line. And if we sink, we are too negatively buoyant. And if we go up, we are not enough, we are too much buoyant. So the goal is to let go of the line. We stop holding on to the line at 10 meters. And if we stay at the same level, that means we are negative. If you are sinking, we are using too much weight. So on the next dive, we're going to use less weights. If we are going up, we're not using enough weight. So on the next dive, we're using more weights. That's what it means to be neutrally buoyant at 10 meters on full lungs, of course. Because if you would exhale, then that would change your buoyancy again. Abdel Hamid, but my instructor can use the same gear and control himself underwater without ankle weights. But my instructor can't use the same gear and control himself underwater without ankle weights. I'm not sure how to interpret this. You use weights, you use a weight belt on your waist. For spearfishing, I would use a weight belt on your waist. And for freediving, you can also use it on your waist, but for more deeper freediving, I would use it in here. I'm not familiar with ankle weights, and I don't see any reason at all why you would use ankle weights. Then again, I'm not a spear fisherman, so if there's any advanced spearfishing people in here, as a freediver, my issue with ankle weights is that how are you going to take them off? If you black out and your body wants to bring you back to the surface, how is he going to take off your ankle weights and swim you back up? If you're wearing a weight belt, all you have to do is take out the weight belt. That's it. You unbuckle the weight belt, it's off. So now you can swim back this person without having to bring all that weight back up. If you're wearing ankle weights, that seems to be more difficult, right? Because now you got two different weights on your ankles. I am not 100% relaxed. That is the problem of 99% of freedivers and spear fishermen. So we learn techniques in the underwater squat on how to relax. Yes, buoyancy depends on suits, fins, body composition, etc. Yeah, I didn't mention body composition. So the more fat you carry in your body, the more positively buoyant, and the more dense you are, which means the more muscle and the less fat, the more you will sink. So the more negatively buoyant you will be. So some people in a swimming pool, they can stay down more easily because they're just more dense. Thank you, Avi. If it's only a fraction of, you could experiment with light FRC, it's comfortable doing so. Yes. So there's full lungs, there's FRC, and there's RV. You can exhale a little bit, so you are somewhere between full lungs and FRC. Between full lungs and FRC. So instead of passively exhaling everything until FRC, you can just exhale a little bit. So we would call that partially empty lungs. So it's not full lungs, it's not FRC either, it's for sure is not RV, it's somewhere in the middle. So you can experiment with exhaling just a little bit. See how that feels. Is tidal volume breathing the best breathe up for pre-static or something else? So that's a good question. So tidal breathing we use for diving, whether that is horizontally in the pool or vertically in the water, freediving or spearfishing. However, for static only, you can experiment with other breathe ups. So in freediving courses, they will teach you to do tidal breathing for everything, also for tidal breathing. But more and more freedivers these days are experimenting with some kind of mild hyperventilation for static apnea only. So when you say something like 1 count in, 2 counts out, that is already a mild form of hyperventilation, because every kind of manipulated way of breathing is hyperventilation. Now that doesn't mean it's heavy hyperventilation, it's mild hyperventilation. For static apnea only, yes, you can experiment with this. But please, 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 for the love of God, do not use this in freediving or spearfishing. This is only for static apnea. And that's why in freediving courses, they are scared to tell you that for static apnea, you can experiment with these other breathing techniques like 1 time in, 2 times out, or even 5 in, 5 out, mild hyperventilation. They are scared to tell you this, and for a good reason, because there's always stupid people out there who will use it for freediving and spearfishing with blackouts as a result. So you got to be very, very mindful about this. This is only for static apnea. For diving itself, vertically or horizontally, only use static apnea. Abdel, the pool is 2.8 meters deep. I'm 1.88. I got you, bro. I'm 184, so I understand. Skinny, 60 kilos. I have 7 millimeter wetsuit, and I use 8 kilo of in the pool. So first of all, why are you using a wetsuit in the pool? Do you need a wetsuit in the pool? Is it freezing cold, the water? Unless it's freezing cold, I would advise you to not use a wetsuit. So in a swimming pool, even if the water is a little bit cold, don't use a wetsuit. All right? If you don't use that 7 millimeter wetsuit, you will probably not need weights either. So experiment with going down to the bottom of the pool, 2.8 meters. That's actually a pretty deep pool. It's almost 3 meters. Without wetsuit, without weights. Try to do your duck dive and go down on full lungs. If your technique of your duck dive is good, if it's on point, you should be able to go down to the bottom of the pool and momentarily be there, and then you will go back up. Then, second exercise you can do, experiment with exhaling a little bit so you can stay down at the bottom of the pool. When it's enough, when you want to go back up, you just push yourself with your feet back up from the floor, and once you reach the surface, then you inhale again, right? So work without wetsuit and without weights. You don't need a wetsuit in a pool, even if it's cold. Plus, you will learn so much more about your own body if you don't use a wetsuit. You can't calculate, you will have to do a surface buoyancy check. Yes, you have to test these things out. Yep, do that on your next session. Thank you, dear professor. You are welcome. For the information, I didn't know that the air in my lungs affects the buoyancy. Of course, of course. Full lungs compared to empty lungs is a totally different world. So experiment with this in the pool. Don't use wetsuits. Don't use weights. Just go in your swimming trunks. Use a mask. You don't need a snorkel. And experiment with little exhalations and more exhalations. FRC or even RV. Yes, you can make fine adjustments. Exactly. Escape the matrix. Oh, I love that name because I want to escape the matrix as well. I think I've done a pretty good job in escaping the matrix so far. Living here in Thailand. Sawadee Cup. You use ankle weights in spearfishing in order to keep your fins down. That makes sense. When you are at the bottom so the fish don't see you. Yes. Are your fins positively buoyant? Because mine are negatively buoyant. So when I throw my fins in the water, they sink. I use carbon fins. And when I had fiberglass fins, they were sinking as well. So you should throw your fins in the water and see if they sink or not. So let them sink from the surface, and also do the next test. Bring them to the bottom of the pool because they might not sink immediately. Bring them to the bottom of the pool, let them go, and see if they come up or if they stay at the bottom of the pool. So you know whether your fins are negatively or positively buoyant. Because most fins are negatively buoyant. Most fins do not go up. So if your fins go up, it's either because, I don't know, there may be plastic fins, but then again, I had plastic fins in the beginning of my freediving journey and they sank to the bottom of the ocean. I once had to go after them. So fins are probably negatively buoyant, but you have to check that. So if your fins go up, then it's not because of the buoyancy of your fins, it's because of something else. It's maybe because of your wetsuit that is positively buoyant. It's maybe because of your socks that are negatively buoyant. So you gotta figure that out. I would not be a fan of ankle weights because I don't see how this can help you. Your center of gravity needs to be in your core or your neck so you can do a perfect duck dive. How can you do a streamlined duck dive if you're wearing ankle weights? I really don't see it. I'm not a fan of this. But yeah, you got to figure this out for yourself. I have to work on my mental health, says Abdel, who doesn't, right, in this crazy world. And relaxation first, because I don't relax, I stress a lot. Yeah, brother, join the underwater squad. That's exactly what we do. You misspoke, you meant only use TV for dynamic. I'm not sure if you're talking about me. If I misspoke, a TV, you probably meant HV, hyperventilation. You can only use hyperventilation for static apnea, not for dynamic, not for constant weight. For dynamic and constant weight, we use tidal breathing. Do never use anything else than tidal breathing for vertical or horizontal diving. I need a wetsuit for 6 hours of pool. Why do you stay 6 hours in the pool? 1 hour in the pool is more than enough. Why do you need 6 hours in a pool? Do you want to train for spearfishing? 6 hours is too long. 1 hour or 40 minutes in a pool, dedicated training is enough. The fin socks can also be positively buoyant. I've never seen that. I've tried on many fins in my life and they all sank down, all of them. They for sure were not positively buoyant. Maybe they were neutral or something, but they did not go up and they would for sure not bring my legs up. But yeah, maybe you're wearing different kind of fins, I don't know. All right, guys, thank you so much, especially Avi and Abdel for being here. That is it. Join the Underwater Squad, guys. You got 7 days free. Russell says, good video, Gert. Thank you so much. So if you want to join this community, we got a 7-day free trial. Just go in there, see if you like it. If you don't like it, then you just leave. You only start paying after the 7 days. However, the free trial, I will remove that one on March 24. So you got 5 days to start a free trial. If you start a free trial on March 23, you still get your 7 days for free. March 24, I will remove the free trial. So go ahead, click on that. Go to school.com/underwatersquad, click on the button Start Free Trial. Thanks for being here, guys. I see you next time. Peace in every breath.